You're listening to the Mile You're In podcast. Everything running related, from 100 meters to 100 miles. And now, here's your host, Phil Patterson Jr.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Mile You're In podcast. Real quickly, shout out, as always, to Mr. Anonymous for supporting the show on Patreon. And also, for those that don't know, I did publish my book last month. So far, I've sold 47 copies. So thank you for those who have bought a copy, whether for yourself or for someone else. I appreciate it. The link is in the show notes. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, hard copy, paperback. Please consider buying a copy and supporting the mission. And honestly, let's just get right into it. I don't want to drag this out. Vero Beach Octopus Ultra 100 miler. This was my third running of the race. The first time I dropped out around miles 62 or 65, somewhere in that range. A lot of things went wrong that race. And then I came back for revenge, for redemption, and completed the 100 miler in a great time. A lot of things went well. I felt real confident after that. I felt like I had found what was working for me again, because up to that point I had 3 consecutive DNFs. So my headspace was very negative at that time. So with a couple years off from running 100 milers, I looked into options, and I considered 2 of the races that I've done the most, this Vero Beach race and the Wildcat Ultra. So going into this race, I think I relied too much on previous experience, not just with the race, but with the distance. But with that said, I realized I made probably the biggest mistake you can make, especially as an experienced runner, as a veteran runner. I did not respect the distance. And sometimes it's okay because you can get away with it in a 5K, 10K, half, maybe even a marathon. But when you get into ultras, it's a lot different, especially when you get into that 100-mile distance, because it's just such a long race. And for most people, it's a 2-day event. And so many things can happen. So many things can change. I've talked about this so many times in so many episodes. And I think that's where I made the biggest mistake, was just not respecting the distance. And I say that because although I was putting in a lot of training during the hottest times of day and running without hydration and without fuel, specifically to put myself in the hardest training conditions possible to make race day a little bit easier, I still didn't respect the mileage aspect of it and the toll that it can take on you physically. Because although those training runs were pretty brutal, they were short and not as long as I used to do. And the work amount was not what I used to put in. So that definitely came back to bite me a little bit, but more so just some mental mistakes. Going into it, I had a plan of what I wanted to do, because for the most part, I knew the course. I know there were some changes, but I knew what to expect for the most part. And I knew that there wasn't too much thinking involved, because from the first 2 years I've done the race, the course was marked very well and easy to follow. So I knew I could rely on that. And I also had my friend Monique, who was going to come out from 7 to 7 and was going to crew me for 12 hours. So there were a lot of things that were going to, in my eyes, make the race a little bit easier, at least the first half. But I was in for a lot of surprises, especially on the first loop. Well, actually, even before I jump into that, I got to thank the race directors, because again, they put on a great race, and specifically Leo, who hooked me up with a room to sleep in with AC and a mattress. and electricity and a bathroom, and I was planning on sleeping in my truck and toughing it out the night before, but he put me in some perfect conditions, and I had a great night's sleep, and I felt real positive going into the race. I felt good. I ate and drank before the race. I felt ready. I felt loose. I felt confident. I really felt good. And on the first loop, it's the expected run along the beach, which is always beautiful, but I felt like this year was a little bit harder, because it seemed like the bank area, where usually the sand's a little harder from the shore, or the tide rolling in, it was more banked. It wasn't as flat as it usually is. So that was kind of beating up my ankles and knees a little bit, and my hips. And then the areas where it was flat, it was real soft. So it's just like you were either, at least my experience is, either you were dealing with the ankle, knee, and hip pain from being on a banked slope, or your thighs, calves, and hamstrings were burning from digging in the sand. So I was trying to pace myself and not burn out, and then was kind of disappointed to realize that this time around it was an out and back on the beach. Usually it's just that one 3-4 mile stretch, and that's it until you get into the 60-mile range and you go back on the beach. But this time it was an out and back, and that second section back it just beat me up, because now I was running out of my fluids, which thankfully that's around the time Monique showed up and was able to start crewing me and save me, because that beach portion was really wearing me out, especially with the sun finally coming up and getting over those clouds that usually block the sunrise a little bit. It's just it was tough. It was really brutal. But I was able to push through that, and I finished the first loop, and I was feeling real confident. I had a plan to change my shoes and socks after each loop and restock everything. Even though I did have Monique to follow along with me, I still wanted to stick to that routine, because when she was gone, I wanted to have that same rhythm and consistency throughout the entire race. And the second loop was a little tricky, because even though it was like maybe 5 or 6 steps, there was one section where you're in the middle of this like forested area, and you're in this knee-deep muck. Like, it's just muddy, murky, dirty, nasty water. So it's like, it's not just you getting your feet, shoes, and socks soaked, but you're getting that like grainy sand and murky, like the black, I don't even know what it is. I don't know if it's coming off of like tree bark or something. I don't know what it is, but that stuff's getting inside. And now when you're running, you feel that grinding against your skin and your toes, and you had to do that twice. That was the loop where you had you had to take the kayak to the island to run your loop and come back. So that was 4 more times where you're getting on and off the kayak in the water, and it's, grainy, sandy, murky water. It's just, my feet really took a beating during that loop, but thankfully it was, the counter to that was that it was so hot that my feet and everything kind of dried off very quickly. Knowing that was going to be probably the wettest section of the race, I put on my most breathable shoes, and I think that also helped. So my feet actually weren't that much of an issue during that section. It was just, again, the weather was pretty brutal at that point, and the water crossings and things like that made you a little bit more cautious and careful. And it was a very technical area too. There were a lot of times where you're in shin to knee high grass that you can't see where you're stepping, and I kicked so many tree roots and logs and sticks and branches to where my toes, you can see all these different black and blue bruised marks, either on my toe or my toenails, where I was just kicking the branches because I could not see them and where my foot was landing. So that was that was beating me up pretty bad. And it was one of those things you just kind of put your head down and try to push through the pain and grind that low, because eventually it's going to get better. But that's where physically I started running into a different problem. I normally have no issue with eating. Usually I'm always hungry, I'm always thirsty, so I'm always consuming and keeping my calorie intake high and on goal, and my energy up. So for whatever reason this time around, my stomach was acting weird. Like I was not hungry. I didn't nibbling at little things, and it was crazy because like 1 minute I would get the appetite and I would eat a bunch, and then the next minute I wouldn't. And it was like I was trying to force things down, and I almost gagged, because it's like it's kind of, you get nauseous at just the thought of it. And it was kind of a back and forth battle, but because of that, I was now trying to double up on my fluid intake to balance and counteract. I wasn't taking in physical form of food. So that battle was draining my energy, because now I was starting to get bloated and I don't know, it's just a lot was going wrong with my gut and it wasn't feeling good. So at the start of loop 3, I had some soup that Monique had got for me while she was at the store, and I ate as many bites as I could get down, and within minutes of starting that loop, I had texted her like, hey, I know you're waiting for me at the next meetup spot, but I'm going to be a few minutes because I got to go to the bathroom, because that soup, I don't know if it was the soup specifically or just a mixture of everything else I was eating. It got to me, and I ran into the bathroom, did what I had to do, got back out there. But that's when I realized the little bit that I still had in me that I was holding on to for a source of energy was now gone. And I could feel it, because although, I felt a little bit lighter, I felt a little bit more free, now I was hungry again. And although I was hungry, I still didn't have the appetite. So it was like my energy level felt like it was draining. And again, I was just pushing through. And while I'm out there on this loop, Monique, unfortunately, her AC went out on her car. And, I wasn't going to ask her to stay. It was too hot out there to ask her to sit in a car with no AC and follow me around for, I think she still had 4 hours that she planned to be there. So I told her, just drop my stuff off back at the base at my truck and, go take care of what you got to do. By doing so, I didn't do a final check with her on the rest of that loop. And that's where I made my big mistake, because there was a sign that said to make a right. And what the sign meant was to make a right to get on the other sign that said that. I feel like in previous years there was. Had I looked at the course prior to that, I would have known. So that's on me. That's a mistake I made, and I own that. But what happened was, when I looked to my right, I seen a runner off in the distance, and I kind of told myself, well, if he's going that way, then the sign is right. We must have to go that way, and maybe we're going to loop back around somewhere. But around a mile after going that route and not seeing a sign, something told me this don't feel right. So I called the race director, I called Monique, and I finally got them on the phone and realized, no, I was supposed to go straight where that sign was. So the runner in front of me, he just happened to turn around, and I kind of waved to him like, yo, we got to go back. So him and I both turned around and started going back. But now, with just the fact that I had kind of been a little bit behind schedule already as it is, with walking a little bit more than I wanted to because of my stomach and everything and low energy, now I knew I just added 2 miles to this race that put me behind a good 20-25 minutes. So now I'm trying to almost do bursts of sprints to get back at least on course and make up the time that I just lost. And because of that adrenaline that was in me, I had it, and I booked it back, was in and out of that stop real quick. I don't even, did I? No, I don't think I even changed my shoes. I think, yeah, I kept my shoes on because I didn't even, yeah, I literally just was in and out within a couple minutes. And I was starting to make up time. And I even passed somebody. I caught somebody and passed them. But I gave it everything I had on that loop to try to make up what I lost. That now I realized my body was shutting down because I still wasn't really eating. I was barely drinking. Although I was trying, it's just the only thing I could really consume and keep down was water. But water's empty and it's not putting back what you're losing. So it was like I was in the negative for a long time, and my running portions were getting shorter and slower, and my walking was getting longer and slower, and it was just like I was falling more and more behind the clock, and my body just wasn't responding. Mentally, I was in it. I was ready to push all the way. I didn't have it in me physically, and it was frustrating. And I remember calling my friend, and even before the race, I had talked to her, and something she had said was, "Oh, this is, don't be nervous. This is a walk in the park for you. You run all the time." And although I know the intentions were good, it was one of those reminders that not everybody understands and knows what this takes and what goes into this. So it's easy to see my previous experience and accomplishments and my current running and think, oh, this is nothing. But it's why they say sometimes you have to consider the source of the quotes, because although they mean well, they may not have the knowledge. So it was more so that I took it as encouragement, and not really advice. It was more, hey, positive talk, trying to keep your head positive, trying to encourage you. So when I called her in the the mid 40s or late 40s of that race, heading back to attempt another loop, we had a pretty deep conversation, and I broke down emotionally, and she encouraged me like, hey, at least try the next loop, see how you feel, and then let's reevaluate. And that's what I did. I pushed myself back to the end of that loop, which I think put me at like 52 miles or so. And I planned to just walk at that point. I was going to see if there was any running left in me. But again, I really wasn't eating, was barely drinking. And as I was out on that loop, I made again another mistake, because now at that point I was so emotional and upset. And if you guys have seen the videos, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, wherever I put it on social media, it was during that video, as I was breaking down and crying and trying to hold it all together, that I missed another turn, because I was just so out of it at that point. I didn't see the sign where I was supposed to turn. And I pulled up the map and was looking, and I'm like, okay, I'm heading in the right direction. I'm supposed to go south, and then I'm going to make a left to get onto the beach and come back. But as I'm getting closer and closer, I'm like, something's not right. And I look and realize that I had missed the turn. I was supposed to, yes, I'm heading in the right direction, but I was supposed to be on another road that leads to where I'm at. And at that point, it was like, you know what? The amount of time it's going to take me to go back to that point and redo this whole section, and then I still got to go out in the middle of the night. The moon was not out, so it was dark. You have to run along the beach with no light because of the turtles and their season or whatever. You can't have any lights. So I just told myself at that point, this is just not worth it anymore. Like, I'm not, especially if I did try to go back and get back on course. I was so far behind the clock, there was no way I was going to make it. And I have too much integrity to not cheat. Like, cause I'm not gonna lie, the thought came to mind, like, hey, no one would know right now if I just get on the beach section and go back and finish the rest of this loop. No one's gonna know, but I would know. And that's the pride I take, and the accountability I have, and the integrity I have, to be honest and legit. So I just turned around and did what I could to get back. I got in my car and I left. And I did let the rest. I texted Leo, the race director, just to let him know. But it was just, all in all, there were too many mistakes that I was making, and part of it was my fault. Some of the things were just, I don't want to put blame on anybody, because I don't want it to come off the wrong way. But there were things I think that could have been done better all around. It was just a rough day. And in the end, I was not as prepared as I should have been, and I did not respect the distance. So I take the accountability for this being a failed attempt, but I take that experience and that reminder going into my next race that there are things I need to not take for granted. There are things I need to be humble about. There are things I need to be honest about. And there are a lot of positives I could still take out of it as well. Because although things did not go well, I stayed positive throughout all of that. Many times where I would have let things ruin my mood and start mentally giving up and wanting to quit, I did not let that happen this time. There were times where in the past I would have gotten frustrated and let it ruin my race, but I didn't this time around. Even when I got lost the first time, it was like, okay, I know what I got to do. I got to get back. So I got to pick up the pace a little bit. And I think really that's all that it comes down to, is that mistake and trying to be a little too cautious in the beginning threw me off my game plan. I think if I had stuck to my game plan, or at least been able to stick to my game plan, then results could have been different. But you also have to be careful. And again, because leading up to the race, I did not respect the different distance and train as well as I should have. I think that's what made me a little more cautious in the beginning of the race, where normally I would have pushed it a little bit more and not been so hesitant. So going into this next race, which I have a lot of experience with, and it's just as hot, just as brutal, I'm gonna take everything and put it together and create that game plan again, but this time remember to stick to it while still allowing myself to be flexible where needed, but not to hold myself back either. I think this time around I held myself back a little bit too much, and I think that's what threw me off the game plan too, was just being behind more than I normally am and feeling the pressure to catch up, because in the end you do have that time limit and you have to respect that as well. So all in all, I don't know if I want to call it a failure. It was more just another lesson learned and something to take into the future. And it was something that I won't let define me, but it's something that I will let refine me.
Thanks for listening to the Mile You're In podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe.